One night at the bar, there was a band performing. The vocalist of the band was Cassie. She put on her apron immediately after she finished singing. She also worked as a waitress besides singing in the bar. While chatting with her friend who was also a waitress there, a group of US Marines came. They didn't feel like serving them, but after Cassie saw her childhood friend, Frankie, was one of them, she hugged him right away and welcomed them well. She then asked her waitress friend to accompany them while she got them some drinks, but when she came back with the drinks, they teased her and irritated her feeling. She left them in anger. Luke, one of Frankie's friends, felt guilty and approached Cassie to apologize for his friend's rudeness, but instead of forgiving him, Cassie told him to leave her, saying that he did it just to get her attention. Finished with the Marines, Cassie's friend suggested that it's cool to marry a man who works as a Marine, considering all household expenses were paid by the state, ranging from monthly life insurance allowances to health benefits. In the middle of the chat, Cassie's cell phone rang. She then asked for a break and rushed to the parking lot. Inside her car, she checked her blood sugar level and then injected insulin. Turned out that 6 months ago, she was diagnosed with early-stage diabetes, so she has to routinely inject insulin into her body. The next morning, when Luke was jogging, a mysterious car approached him, intended to hit him. Luckily, he managed to avoid the car. That turned out to be driven by a drug dealer named John who came to collect Luke's drug debt of $15,000. Before he joined the Marines, when he was still unemployed, Luke was once a heavy drug addict and had to owe some money to John to buy the drugs. John threatened to kill him and his family if he didn't manage to pay the debt. Luke asked for more time to pay him off as soon as possible. As usual, after singing in the evening, she went to the toilet to inject the insulin, but unfortunately, her insulin dosage for this week was running out and she didn't have money to get another dosage. While limply trying to sit down, Cassie accidentally saw the army badge on the toilet glass. She instantly remembered what her friend said yesterday about the living allowances that the Marine's wife will be provided with. She got an idea. The next day, Cassie visited Frankie. She offered him a deal to get married. She was forced to marry a Marine to get medical insurance and left the wife's monthly allowance for Frankie. The plan was rejected outright. Frankie explained that after his overseas assignment ended, he already planned to marry his girlfriend. Hearing the refusal, she was disappointed, but as a friend, she still supported Frankie's decision. Outside, Luke accidentally overheard all their conversation. The next day, driven by his fear, Luke desperately invited Cassie to meet him at a restaurant. He told her that yesterday, he overheard Cassie's conversation with Frankie. He agreed to replace Frankie as long as he could get all the wife's monthly allowance that the government provided. He said that in 2 days, he would leave for duty in Iraq, and if Cassie agreed to this deal, then they both have to get married right away. He also reminded her that during the contract marriage, to avoid suspicion, they should always send romantic messages to each other and frequently made video calls. Luke managed to persuade Cassie, who was in dire need of money, to do the plan. The next morning, Cassie and Luke went to the church. Cassie was confused to see Frankie inside the church. It turned out that Luke was the one who asked him to be a witness to their wedding. Frankie lent Luke the ring that he will use to propose to his girlfriend and told Cassie to keep the ring until he came home from Iraq. Starting that day, Luke and Cassie had officially become husband and wife. The next day, before leaving for Iraq, Luke and the other Marines gathered to say goodbye to their families. He gave a paper containing the name and phone number of his brother and then said if one day something happened to him on the battlefield, Cassie had to immediately tell his brother about it. Months passed and they both sent romantic messages to each other regularly and lived separately until one day, on a video call, Luke's and the other Marines' faces looked restless. He told Cassie that at the time, the entire army was on guard from the enemy's attack. Hearing that, Cassie tried to entertain the Marines there by singing the song that she wrote herself.
We're drowning in, not sure should we fly or fight. Hope you come back home.
She was happy to be able to cheer them up with her music. The next day on a video call, Cassie was happy to announce that her band had an offer to perform at a famous music festival. Seeing her wife's happy face, made Luke happy too. The concert day arrived and after some preparations, Cassie and her band did the gig.
We're drowning in our eyes. We don't care. Let him have you, so till I hope you come back home.
The next night, Cassie got a call telling her that Luke was seriously injured by a mine explosion and was undergoing surgery. In a panic, she rushed home to call Luke's brother. She searched everywhere for the paper that Luke gave but couldn't find it. The phone number was lost. Fortunately, she could find Luke's brother's address on the internet. The next morning, she rushed to the address. When she got there, it was Luke's father who opened the door. She didn't know where to start, so she introduced herself as Luke's wife. She also told him about her husband's condition on the battlefield. Hearing the story, the father was shocked. Luke never told him about his marriage and the reason why he ended up joining the army. All this time, what his family knew was that he had a lot of debt and then caused trouble. 3 days later, Luke was sent home to America to undergo further medical treatment. He was shocked to see the whole family visit him. He wondered how did they find out about him. His father then gave Luke and Cassie some space alone. Cassie explained that she was panicked and didn't know what to do, which ended up telling his dad about them. Luke explained that the reason why he never wanted his family to know was that his father was a cop and was often in contact with military officials who are now his superiors. If this fake marriage was found, his father will definitely report it no matter what, even if it is his son. Since the whole family had found out, they had to live together and acted like a real family from now on to avoid suspicion. Cassie laughed amusedly. She then asked about Frankie's condition. While holding back his tears, he told her that Frankie was also a victim, but unlike him, in the mine incident, Frankie's life could not be saved. When she heard the news, her tears broke and immediately went away. The next day after the funeral, Cassie gave Frankie's ring to his lover. She told her about Frankie's plan after returning from duty in Iraq. Frankie wanted to propose to his girlfriend, but Frankie never really came home. 1 week later, after leaving the hospital, Luke was forced to stay in Cassie's apartment so that they won't be suspected for a while. Luke also had to undergo therapy regularly every once a week with her father and brother until he was completely healed. So, before Dad came the next week, they both had to make this house look like a newlywed couple's house.
Okay, here, unpack. Where'd you get this?
They managed to avoid any suspicions. Weeks later, Cassie's career as a singer went popular. Music labels began to be interested in producing her songs. On the other hand, Luke was still focused on struggling through his recovery. One afternoon when Luke was alone, he saw John's car in front of the apartment. John called and said that he knew about Luke's fake marriage. Since Cassie was his wife now, John said that he wouldn't hesitate to terrorize Cassie's family too if he didn't pay off all his debt. On an afternoon at the park, Cassie and his brother gave a dog to accompany him during the therapy so that Luke's psychology could get better. The next morning when she just got home from work, she was confused to see her broken door had been repaired. Inside, she was surprised to see Luke was able to walk even though he was still using a crutch. They both then had breakfast together on the balcony. A simple conversation on the balcony made the relationship between them closer. They were joking with each other, laughing, and even challenging each other with spicy food. Finally, when Cassie wanted to help Luke to take a shower, she saw with her own eyes how bad the wound on Luke's leg was for the first time. She began to understand how suffering he was. She promised to take care of him better. At night, after sleeping on the sofa for a long time, Cassie finally allowed Luke to sleep together on the bed. The next day at the family barbecue, Cassie was fascinated to see Luke's kindness to the children. His sister-in-law wished Cassie a kid, judging Luke would be a great father. One night, while sleeping, Luke woke up hearing the phone ring. It was Cassie's mother on the phone, telling him that somebody tried to sneak inside her house. When they got to Cassie's mother's house, Luke introduced himself as a close friend of Cassie. Cassie immediately calmed her mother. Luke told Cassie to accompany her mother while he checked the house. Suddenly, John called and told Luke that he was the one who broke into the house and said that he had secretly recorded what Luke said to Cassie's mother, saying that he was just her friend. John threatened that he would use the recording as evidence that this marriage was just an arrangement if Luke didn't pay off his within a week. After returning home, Cassie looked very tired due to his diabetes. Luke immediately helped her lay down and took her diabetes medicine. It was him taking care of her now. They both had fulfilled their vow as husband and wife to be there for each other, during the ups and downs. The next morning, because John's actions yesterday had crossed the line, Luke was looking desperate to go to John's headquarters and beat him up. Satisfied, he then gave money he got from the government to pay off the remaining debt and left immediately. Before returning home, he went to Frankie's grave and vented all his problems. After returning home, Luke was confused to see all his belongings packed in a suitcase. He asked what was the problem. Cassie explained that someone named John came to her mother's house and told her everything about Luke's past and his debt problem. Seeing that it was impossible to cover it up anymore, Luke finally opened up to Cassie and told her everything. Just like Cassie, his goal in the first place was to get married for the money. He needed the money to pay off his drug debt. He tried to convince her that despite his past as an addict, he was completely clean and would never want to use drugs anymore. But no matter how hard he tried, Cassie was beyond heartbroken. She couldn't forgive all his lies all this time, especially because her mother was also dragged into trouble. Before leaving, she said after the concert this night, she didn't want to see Luke's face anymore and asked for a divorce. That night, even though she was still heartbroken, she tried to remain professional during the show. On the other hand, Luke vented all his problems by trying to run, and after what felt like an eternity, he finally managed to run again. He was so happy, but not for long. Suddenly, Luke's superior came and told him to come to the office. After the concert, Cassie's band manager informed her that she was invited to perform as the opening singer at the big concert that would be held next week. At the midnight, when Cassie was sleeping, Luke's father called her and told her that in the afternoon, a man named John reported their fake marriage, and now Luke was being interrogated at the military headquarters. Luke's father, who has been deceived all this time, expressed his disappointment to her. Hearing that, Cassie couldn't say anything but was silenced in guilt. A few days later, the military trial was held. In that trial, Luke's lawyer had told him to be quiet and not to say anything so that his sentence can be commuted, since this fake marriage case in the military to get government benefit was not a new thing. When he saw the face of his love, he felt that he couldn't protect the woman he loved. He looked determined to stand up and then made a statement, saying that he planned all this by himself. Cassie was just a victim of his plan. Hearing this confession, the judge decided to sentence Luke to 6 months in prison while Cassie was declared not guilty. The next day, before starting her performance at the opening concert, Cassie watched a video of her marriage with Luke. She heard the oath they said in the video, to stay together in ups and downs. When she sang on the stage, she began remembering all her memories with Luke. Every lyric she sang sent Luke's face in her mind. Cassie realized that she had fallen in love with him. At his home, Luke was getting ready to leave for his sentence when he saw a badge for him. Even though he violated military law, Luke was still awarded for his services, who had sacrificed and fought to defend the country on the battlefield.
That was amazing. Thank you. Thank God.
Cassie arrived on time. The moment she met Luke, she immediately expressed her feelings. What was just pretended before had become real. Her feelings for Luke were sincere. She loved him. They both had this fake marriage heartfelt. They had kept their vows to take care of each other whatever the conditions. Even if it's just simple things, Cassie wanted to be able to eat on the balcony with Luke again, to laugh together. She wanted Luke to be the first person to hear her song. No matter how long it takes, she would always wait for him.